is my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so this episode marks the school festival, and well, basically the school festival episode is just a who's who of people that the Class 3E has actually met over the course of their journey. So, it introduces a lot of former antagonists, former side characters. It basically they all just show up during the school festival arc, and it's actually kind of interesting. So it starts off with Gakushu Asano actually arranging for a corporate sponsorship. His idea is to just completely wipe out Class 3E you can get them completely out of the way, right out of the gate, by forming a corporate sponsorship that will enable him to have basically the best restaurant on campus. He's going to have the best school festival thing on campus, and he's just entirely dedicated to that. I'll get to him in a minute, but basically the idea is that the school festival is supposed to help people show off what they can do, and it does work out pretty well for Class 3E. So Class 3E is initially unsure of what they're supposed to do, pointing out that Gakushu has now that Gakushu has arranged for a corporate sponsorship, they're really not sure how they're supposed to deal with him. At which point Core Sensei proposes a possible opportunity. As he points out, the Class 3E mountain is actually home to a bunch of different exotic ingredients that are kind of just tucked away in the wilderness that you can't really find anywhere else. And they quickly realize that they can actually use those as a unique dish that they can then serve to everybody at the school festival and everybody who attends. So with that, they then proceed to go to work and have Tokoyata go do the everything down below and have her be the presenter for everything. They just kind of have her set up down at the base of the mountain and show off all of the stuff, pointing out that considering that she's one of the more pleasant people in Class 3E, she's definitely a good job. She does a pretty good job of advertising, but unfortunately, the first group of customers that they actually find are Ryuga and his pals. So if you don't remember Ryuga was the upperclassman thug that kidnapped Kaide and Kanzaki, and he kind of just shows up at the school festival, pointing out that he plans to ruin their day by giving them a bad review. And Karma even gives them a bit of a hard time, pointing out that they're that stupid to be there to try and kidnap another girl. They got another thing coming. Only for Ryuko to basically just completely dismiss that that's what they're doing. He points out that he doesn't need to kidnap somebody to ruin their day. Pointing out that all he needs to do is leave a bad review to say that the food is crap, and then he can just go on his merry way and ruin their entire day that way. Unfortunately, the food winds up being a lot better than he expected and is a lot more delicious. And Fuwa even makes a little side joke to Shokugeki no Soma. Namely the over-the-top reactions that they usually have in that series regarding food. Ryuga admits to himself that the food is good, but can't openly bring up the fact that he kind of can't really admit the food is good to them. And even points out that even though his buddies have kind of jumped the ship and decided that all the food is good, that he's kind of in denial about the food being good, and even declares that he's still supposed to be crap. Only for Irina to basically seduce him and his buddies into going off and spreading the good word anyway, because yes, I mean she uses her skills pretty well here to just kind of trick them into behaving, so that way they can continue to get more food and buy everything on the menu, and then just kind of tricks them into fangirling over the food and just spreading the word that way. And it is pretty effective. At which point Sakura shows up with her entire cram school class and their principal, and it's revealed that Nagase actually helps her with her studying from time to time and continues to stay in touch, and that he actually called her up so that she could help spread the word. They do admit that the food is good, but Nagisa openly admits that they may have a bit of trouble with the whole getting the food to actually spread out to the people, pointing out that Asano's whole current campaign is on another level. At which point the principal just brings up that he admits that it's a bit of an uphill struggle, but that if they continue doing what they're doing to the best of their ability, that they'll be able to bring in more people and more customers, and that the customers will just kind of come to them. So, and with that they part ways. At which point Nagisa realizes that takes what the principal said to heart. At which point Ryo Nakamura openly apologizes to Nagisa, pointing out that she heard about his mother, and that basically that the entire reason he dresses androgynously is because of her, and openly apologizes, pointing out that she's going to be taking it a little bit easier on the teasing from now on. Although Nagisa admits it's okay, and that he can actually take a bit of teasing from Karma and Ryo every now and again. But as he's saying that, you remember Yuji? He shows up at the school festival, and well, long story short, he's basically been stalking Nagisa for the better part of several months. And finally figures out that she actually attends Kunigigauka, and that he's actually partaking in the school festival, and that he actually runs the Class 3E menu and all of the other stuff that's going on. Oh, and so I should admit that how amazing Ryo is in this scene, because she wasn't there when Nagisa met Yuji, but it was apparently informed by the other girls of what happened, and so she apparently decides to take pity on Nagisa, but because while he's talking to Yuji, she changes their pants without him noticing, and then slips them into her mini skirt while she wears his baggy pants. So yeah, with that he realizes that he now has no choice but to actually go forward and go on a date with Yuji, and much to his chagrin, and while Ryo provides flashcards to try and extort as much money out of Yuji as humanly possible. With that, Nagisa actually sequesters himself and Yuji over to a remote corner of the school campus to just kind of make sure that nobody from Class 3E or anybody currently on the mountain can see them. And as he's kind of just following some cue cards to actually convince Yuji that everything is normal and everything's okay. As he's trying to get Yuji to spend more money on the food, some of the former assassins that they've dealt with have actually show up. Namely, Red Eye show up. Apparently, he was attacked by the Reaper and is now completely recovered, and he even shows up with a pheasant as a gift. Pointing out that he brought it so that they can use it to actually, cook it and use it as part of their meal. And Yuji is initially very confused and concerned because Red Eye just kind of shows up with a sniper rifle, which Nagisa uses, and Nagisa, with Ryo's help, actually dissuades the entire idea that he's actually an assassin, and points out that he's actually a foreigner who changed his name to a fake anime name, and is a big anime fan, and that he's just kind of shows up and is part of the National Hunting Association, which Yuji accepts, until Lovro shows up out of the blue again. Apparently, it was briefly mentioned, but it's more elaborated here. He survived his attack with the Reaper as well, and he shows up to talk business with Karasuma. Except Yuji also notably panics because basically Lovro looks kind of like the dead, and sure enough, again, Nagisa has to dissuade him from actually finding out the truth, stating that he's a comedian, which is not anywhere near believable. And also Gastro Smog and Grip show up, and Nagisa has to just point out that they're part of his theater troupe as well. And then eventually Yuji begins to come to the conclusion that Nagisa is lying, and realizes that Nagisa is trying to hide his feelings and trying to play dumb to try and prevent him from actually finding out the truth about who these guys really are. And Yuji sees right through those lies, pointing out that because of how he grew up in his family, he kind of developed a penchant for knowing when people are lying to him, due to the fact that a lot of people have come to his dad and have basically just kind of struck up a deal to hide their less than admirable reputation, we should say. At which point Nagisa points out that that's actually a pretty impressive skill to have. and then reveals that people have always been judging him for his appearance, pointing out that people have always assumed he was a girl, and that he's always been using that and that while he was always afraid of that and always using that, he does point out that he actually has been using it as a strength more often than not, and points out that even despite their flaws, they can actually succeed as people. At which point he also admits through that long-winded speech that he's actually a guy, which Yuji finds hard to believe, but once Yuji begins to accept that Nagisa isn't actually lying, Yuji kind of begrudgingly leaves. He just kind of gets up and walks off, with Nagisa realizing that he definitely blew it with Yuji, and that he accidentally upset Yuji because Yuji was kind of dead set on the fact that Nagisa was a girl. So he believes that they actually screwed over a potential friendship with Yuji. However, as it turns out, that wasn't exactly the case, as the next morning during the second day of the school festival, and as Nagisa and the rest of his classmates are climbing up the mountain to get ready to start business, a bunch of reporters swarm the place, and eventually, as it turns out, according to Ritsu, apparently Yuji is a very famous food blogger. Apparently he has his own blog where he reviews food and reviews a bunch of different restaurants and stuff like that. And he apparently left Class 3E's restaurant a very positive, glowing review. So, and in the process, it turns out that not only has Yuji decided to actually use this power to help people and actually use this to benefit people who can't benefit themselves, but that he also now sees Nagisa as more of a friend rather than a love interest, and despite the fact that Nagisa basically broke his heart by admitting that he was a guy. So yeah, Yuji is now in good terms with the rest of Class 3E, and it shows. So yeah, now that Yuji is now best friends with Nagisa, because of that, they've basically been swamped the entire day and are starting to run out of resources and run out of food. And when they contemplate whether or not they should go into selling side dishes until they run out, Koro-sensei actually admits that they should probably wrap things up, pointing out that, well, long story short, he doesn't want to upset the ecosystem. As he points out, everything needs to remain in balance, and that as everything harmonizes with one another, so too does everybody else's relationships with each other harmonize with that as well. And they quickly realized that it was basically just a long-winded lesson to say that every life they touch can come back to impact them in a variety of different ways, and sometimes in ways that other people would be surprised at. Case in point, some previous antagonists from the series that showed up and started spreading positive word of mouth for Class 3E's restaurant for the school festival. So yeah, Koro-sensei does very much have a point that this is actually a good thing, and that wrapping up production is a great way to preserve the whole ecosystem balance. But that in doing so, it actually shows that they were actually able to touch one another and actually were able to grow as people. And because of that, they were actually able to develop a pretty hefty positive reputation of the restaurant, despite almost completely running out of food. But as they officially run out of food and only have like one or two things left, Hiromi Shioda actually shows up and has a one-to-one talk with her son while they kind of prepare their last meal for her. At which point Hiromi apologizes for what happened, namely that she drugged Nagisa and dragged him out to school. But in the process, she actually learned that Nagisa actually did grow up quite a bit and actually gained some newfound confidence. And that even though she's a little bit upset that Nagisa is eventually going to leave her, she points out that she's proud of the person he's become, and that even if she has some problems, that she's still his mother, and that he should at the very least continue to live with her at least until he's of age, which Nagisa accepts, and does accept her apology. But with that, the school festival actually comes to an end. So basically we didn't see any of the other classes and what they did, but we did see Gakushu's, which is basically that he paid for several performances that rotate through the main campus building on the main stage. And basically his idea is that he just rotates everybody around every hour, and that because of that he's able to just kind of squeeze everybody for everything they're worth, and it worked. He and his class wound up coming in first place overall because of his brilliant strategy to just rotate everybody around from one side of the gymnasium to the other using the stage, and then just using a show to entertain people for a benefit concert, while also charging them money for the food so that they can, as an entry fee. So yeah, basically, long story short is Gakushu and his team won, but everybody else voices their praise of Class 3E, who, despite shutting down halfway through the first day, actually still managed to come in third in spite of that. So yeah, they came in third. So yeah, Class 3E didn't beat Gakushu and his cronies, but they came in third despite shutting down for not 2 days in. So, which is openly impressive, and some of the people in the class actually remark about how they feel like Class 3E should have been a punishment, but clearly they're thriving, and they're actually starting to feel a little bit jealous of Class 3E, which Gakuho Asano actually overhears and is a little bit perturbed by how much things are starting to change in the school. So yeah, even though because Class 3E didn't come in first, they still came in third overall in the school festival, which has caused public opinion to shift on them regardless. Because it would be one thing if they came in first, even despite limited resources and their limited location. But the fact that they came in third despite shutting down in the middle of the day, in the middle of their second day, was actually enough to actually spark some discussion about whether or not Class 3 is truly being punished up at the satellite campus. So yeah, while this episode overall just kind of was a who's who of who showed up in the series up to this point, it does have another secondary purpose, in that it shows that Class 3E is slowly starting to turn we've already seen that, but it's now the opinion has somewhat shifted toward Class 3E about how they're actually kind of cool now. So yeah, maybe discriminating against them isn't such a good idea after all. Because if they're managing to do stuff like this, then what else are they capable of that the rest of the student body doesn't know of? But yeah, in any case, yeah, that's my review of Assassination Classroom. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks, and I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. And also, if you want to see more videos from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on YouTube's algorithms. So if you want to check out something new or something you kind of will like, but then be sure to check out both of those. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!